Hey there guys, Spexxy here, and I hope to find you all doing very well. Today I am here to bring you just a little taster of a brand new game by Amplify Creations and rising star, Decay of Logos. Yep, I do believe that it is pronounced Decay of Logos as opposed to Logos, as that would conjure up a rather different image altogether, but I could be wrong. So then let's just put that name aside for a moment, as this video is here to give you all a quick insight and overview into the game itself. What is it about? What does it play like? And probably way more importantly to most of you watching this video right now, is it actually any good? Well, before I go any further into any of that, I would just like to point out that I was provided with this key from the game developers themselves for review purposes. I would like to take this opportunity to personally thank them for this, but I can assure you all that this will in no way bias or influence my opinion on this game in the slightest, and I shall only convey my honest thoughts and feedback during this video. So then, let's just get started. The first question was, what is it all about? Well, as you can see here from the very first playable section of the game and this small cutscene introduction sequence, the main protagonist is a high fantasy style elf-like character known as Ada, and by the looks of it, she's having a rather bad day to say the least, what with her village being burnt down to the ground around her and her folks getting themselves all slaughtered and stuff. How inconsiderate of them. Lucky for us then, Ada isn't the kind of girl to run away from trouble at the first sign and go cowering in a corner somewhere, or drown her sorrows staring at the bottom of a flagon of mead in some stereotypical medieval-like dimly lit grotty old alehouse. Oh no, far from it. Instead, Ada is a headstrong, feisty young elven lass who knows how to handle herself in the face of adversity, and in light of recent events has obviously got plenty of good reason to be pretty damn pissed, to be honest. Along with her newfound and may I say truly magnificent elk companion, the two are destined to set out on an epic journey of both discovery and cold-blooded vengeance. So then from the very get-go, you're probably going to notice that this game is somewhat reminiscent of a certain legendary Nintendo franchise that shall go unnamed. The hell with it, it's Zelda, alright? There, I said it, so sue me. Well, no, don't actually sue me, Nintendo, that's just a figure of speech, I know what you're like. So it's pretty obvious then that the game does share more than a passing resemblance to Breath of the Wild, what with its stylised cel-shaded designs, lighting effects and colour palettes, and I wouldn't even try to debate that fact for a second. The character herself, being elven and all, has got a set of those cute pointy out ears that are more than a little familiar to us for being synonymous with our old pal Link. And the similarities don't just simply stop at the mere cosmetics either. The gameplay itself will see you working out simple puzzles, exploring underground dungeons, discovering treasure chests, battling monsters with swords and shields, and riding around the world on a trusty steed. Sound familiar? Apart from Zelda, there is also a definite feel of Dark Souls running through the roots of this game, particularly in the combat sections and the camps at which you rest your character. And all of this wouldn't actually be so bad if it managed to do these things well. However, Decay of Logos never seems to quite hit the mark on either of these playstyles. With slightly sluggish controls and somewhat infuriating combat, it can often feel like more of a chore than an epic quest. Decay of Logos also differs from Zelda in its level design, in that instead of giving the player a sprawling open world map to explore with smaller sub-levels attached, it goes for a far more linear approach, with downscale play areas to navigate through in a sequential order, or at least as far as the portion of the game that I've played up until now. Aside from the smaller linear designs, the maps themselves are pretty decent. Amplify Creations have done a splendid job with the art style, creating a look that, although not technically groundbreaking or cutting edge in any way, is at least fitting for the game in question, with more of a last gen feel to the visuals in my opinion. But then there's nothing wrong with that. You can tell that everything from the simple rock formations, trees and bushes, to the distant mountain ranges and ancient ruins has all been designed with loving care, giving the game a sense of depth that makes you truly believe that there is an expansive world stretching out there somewhere far beyond the confines of the restricted level designs themselves. And this is something that should not be merely overlooked, or taken for granted for that matter, because it's exactly the kind of attention to detail that can make a game extremely easy to become immersed into as you find yourself swept along by the storytelling. You start the game with bog standard weapons and armour, all of which gets damaged during combat over time until eventually becoming totally unfit for purpose. But worry not, adventurer, as you will find numerous replacement armour parts along with various weapons scattered throughout the land, either in lootable treasure chests or as drops from the many defeated foes that you will inevitably beat to a pulp during your quest. Along with the many weapons and armour drops, you will also find random potions to replenish your health and stamina as you go. Or you might just want to try your luck at eating the local fungus varieties that you may find growing around the place. But do try to be mindful when doing this, as eating wild mushrooms comes with a risk, and they can often prove to be very hazardous to your health. The selection of weapons and armour throughout the game seems pretty impressive, varying wildly in style and effectiveness, with some even being imbued with magical powers that increase their stats. Do bear in mind though that Ada is only capable of carrying 2 weapons at any one given time, one heavy and one light. Additional weapons and armour can be collected though and stored within your elk saddle inventory, or in one of the many wells scattered throughout the land. Well, all of this talk of weapons has got me thirsty for a fight, so let's get into the controls. Well, aside from the ability to run, jump and interact with your environment, you also get to perform both light and heavy attacks, which each require a different level of stamina to pull off before requiring a cooldown period to regain enough breath to strike your next blow. Alongside this, one thing I certainly did find helpful is the ability to focus onto your opponent and dodge around them, either by performing side steps or by using the slide move. This technique proves almost vital to your success against some of the game's larger and heavier hitting enemies. As you can clearly see with this giant here, sliding in and out of range and attacking from behind helped a lot to avoid his clobbering swipes or devastating ground pound attack. In general though, the overall combat seems a little on the clunky side, with inconsistent hitboxes and buttons not always registering fast enough. The whole thing too often seems to become literally hit and miss. But with a good deal of patience, things did eventually become a little easier for me, though that likely had far more to do with my character levelling up and dealing more damage per attack. I'd describe the combat experience as a little on the repetitive side too, and overall the enemy AI is definitely lacking. Look elsewhere, NASA, you won't find any rocket scientists here. The early level baddies are pretty damn stupid, but to be honest that actually lends itself to the storyline, as these guys are basically animated tree stumps who wander around like tortured soulless zombies, so you never really get that feeling that you might be murdering brute. Most of the enemies that I encountered seemed to attack with basic swings and lunges, with little variation to keep things exciting, and challenge came far more from the aforementioned control issues than from the player skill or having to learn new enemy attack patterns. In the first couple of hours of gameplay, I encountered a limited number of different enemy types: tree people, giants, killer onions, one-eyed wasps, and the bane of my life, slugs. Yep, that's right, I said slugs. Don't be fooled by the name, these things are far from sluggish, they are in fact pretty damn vicious. They have the tendency to continually pounce on you once you are within range, and each strike deals paralysis to you, slowing you down. Combine this then with the lackluster combat mechanics and you soon have a recipe for total rage! So as you can see, this game is far from easy, and whilst it may not truly live up to Dark Souls in gameplay terms, it certainly doesn't hold your hand either, and can be extremely tough at times. As you play, your character becomes tired, resulting in reduced stats and eventually leading to injury and the inability to run. Of course, you will find several save points on your travels through the world, making your progress a little less stressful, and some of these will allow the player to regain those lost stats by resting up. And don't forget, Ada doesn't always need to rely on her wits and weapons alone, as a little while into the game, shortly after releasing this annoying little turd from captivity, you are taught the basics of Magicai. This will gain you numerous spells which you can use to aid you in your quests, such as Lumen to light darker areas of the world without a torch, and Trudeau, which acts like a shockwave, knocking opponents backwards or breaking open doors. You will notice a lack of a mana bar on the screen though, and this is because Ada doesn't use mana to cast these spells at all, and as such, using any form of Magicai will decrease your health bar directly, meaning that you need to be mindful not to overuse it. Seek and ye shall find! Exploration is undoubtedly the key to becoming a successful adventurer, so be sure to keep an eager eye out for anything looking a little out of the ordinary, as many of the game's better items are often hidden from plain sight, either behind breakable barriers which can be smashed by weapons, magic or the slide ability, or else sitting atop out of reach areas, requiring a need for negotiators strategically placed ladders and walkways to get to the blasted loot. Now let's talk about that elk companion, shall we? Since seeing this creature in the trailer videos and the early concept designs, I truly wanted to love this beast. However, upon playing, I never really felt any sense of connection to it. Although there is an interesting element to the game in the need to feed the elk berries in order to calm its nerve before you can ride it, with its stress meter increasing as you do so, up to the point where it will knock you out of the saddle in a raging huff. The far bigger issue here is riding the damn thing itself. Oversensitive controls often see you weaving from side to side, banging into walls, trees and just about any other impassable obstacle as you struggle to steer the damn thing in your chosen direction. And even then, it never really feels as if there's any actual benefit to riding it either, as you seem to travel around the world equally as fast on foot, making the only use for the elk the part it has to play in some of the game's puzzles, for example opening doors by standing on pressure pads, but due to the clumsy controls this can also become far more frustrating than fun. Looking into those big shiny eyes though, I almost feel guilty for even thinking it, let alone saying it, but the elk turned out to be far more of a hindrance to me than any help. I'm sorry there, big fella. Even given all of these negative points though, I still found myself wanting to play. Don't get me wrong, I do still believe there are areas of the game which could be vastly improved on, but in general I found it an enjoyable experience for the most part, and hope leads me to believe that with the developers working on regular fixes, patches and updates, some of these issues may still be ironed out. Fingers crossed. So now on to the final question of the day, the one that you've all been waiting for. Is Decay of Logos any good? Well yeah, I think it is actually. Undoubtedly the game is somewhat familiar in its look and style to both Dark Souls and the Legend of Zelda series, as previously mentioned, but why should that be taken as being a negative thing? I guess what I'm trying to say is if one game gets something right, where is the harm in another developer learning from that and incorporating it into their own title? We often hear claims of rip-offs or copies, but I feel we shouldn't always be on the defensive, automatically looking to call a game out for being a clone if what they're trying to emulate is worthy of emulating in the first place and if they actually do a good job of it all. I'm pretty sure that we can all agree that the Zelda games tended to get things right far more often than they got them wrong. Yes, I'm looking at you, Skyward Sword. The problem here is they haven't quite managed to pull it off in my opinion. This game does not nearly live up to the games that it's so clearly inspired by, though I guess with them being such legendary cult titles, that was always going to be a big ask. Unfortunately, in comparison, Decay of Logos feels somewhat unpolished and lacklustre. I'd love to see this game rise up to be compared on equal terms with any other game out there, but even if they manage to fix all of the issues I've mentioned, would that actually be enough? When we get down to the brass tacks, Decay of Logos is a good game, of that there's no doubt, even despite all of its faults, but it just isn't quite a great game. I do however feel that in terms of the content it has to offer, there is still more than enough to keep even the most experienced of gamers going for a fair few hours at least, so long as they can stick with it. After playing for a little over 3 hours myself, I can honestly say that I don't truly feel as though I've scratched the surface of this game quite yet, and there's still much more for me to discover within it, which I thoroughly intend to do. You will find other reviews for this game out there though, many of them stating more serious issues such as textures not loading, frame drops, freezes and crashes, making the game unplayable. However, I can only assume that this is down to older versions of the game being reviewed, as I did not experience any of those problems in nearly 4 hours of gameplay on the PC version, so maybe they've been fixed already. So if you, like me, find yourself yearning for new adventure and seek a good old-fashioned combat-driven exploration game with platforming elements thrown in for good measure, then although it may be far from perfect, I still truly believe that you cannot go far wrong with this game. I'd like to thank Amplify Creations and Rising Star once again for providing me with a key for this game so that I could share my honest review with you guys. I hope that they will not take my feedback to heart, but rather in the good faith that it is intended, and wish them all the best with the continuing support for Decay of Logos and any future projects that they may be working on. Decay of Logos can be found for PC on Steam, and is also available for Nintendo Switch, PS4 and Xbox One, and I highly recommend that you go and check it out. So that's your lot folks, show's over. I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and if you did then why not spank the hell out of that thumbs up button, and don't forget to subscribe for more great content. And in the meantime, see you soon, bye for now.